Welcome to this quick video about preschool health promotion. Just like with all the other age groups, we're going to start with discussing screenings. And just like with our toddlers, we're going to start with hearing and vision screenings. These preschoolers are better at following directions, so this usually is going much easier now with the slightly older children. Again, we also want to continue with dental screenings. Usually the dentist is doing that by this age rather than the primary care physician, but still something to consider. And finally, if we had issues with lead toxicity or iron deficiency in the younger age groups, then we can continue those annual screenings as well. Next, let's talk about anticipatory guidance. We have several things to address in this category. First, we've always talked about sleep for all of our age groups, so let's continue that. In the preschool age group, most kids are continuing to sleep 10, maybe 12 hours at night, and then they need at least one nap during the day. Even if the child's attending daycare or some kind of pre-K or kindergarten program, they usually do have rest times built into the day. If the child does not actually want to sleep, then they should at least have some quiet time, sitting and reading books or listening to music, something where they actually give their brain and their body a chance to decompress and prepare for the rest of the day. Two new issues that pop up in this age group are night terrors and then what we call irrational fears. So these are things like being afraid of monsters or being afraid of the dark. Night terrors are when the child is sound asleep, sleeping peacefully, and then suddenly they seem to wake up, although usually they're still asleep, and they're screaming at the top of their lungs. It sounds like there's an axe murderer in their room trying to kill them. Actually, there's nothing going on. There's not even a nightmare. Once the child finally wakes up, they don't actually remember anything scary at all. For the parents, however, it is truly terrifying. Suddenly their child is screaming, and it sounds like something is terribly wrong, and so it can be very frightening for the parents. So it's important that we warn the parents that night terrors are coming, so they know that there's nothing wrong. They can simply supervise the child to make sure the child does not accidentally fall out of bed or start sleepwalking or anything like that. And then when the child gradually wakes up on their own, they can simply tuck the child back into bed and have everyone go back to sleep. So scary, but easy to deal with. Irrational fears are not scary for parents. Most grown-ups are not afraid of monsters or bad dreams or afraid of the dark. But the children are. So the parents have to come up with some way to address these fears, or the children are actually very reluctant to go to bed. Remember that preschool children do not have the same logic that adults do, so parents need to find a way to address this fear from the child's level. If the child's afraid of the dark, that's fairly simple. Just leave a nightlight on in their room. There's no reason that the room needs to be pitch dark. If there's a fear of monsters, well, you have to get a little more creative here. Some people have rituals that keep the monsters away. Some people take a bottle of Febreze or even just water and spray it around the room every night to keep the monsters away. They make it monster repellent. Whatever the child believes will help, go ahead and do it. If the child is afraid of bad dreams, I've seen parents have a specific pillowcase that's for the good dreams and a specific pillowcase that's for the bad dreams, and they just always make sure they have the good dreams pillowcase. Remember, these children still believe in magic, so whatever magical solution you can create for them that they believe, that's fine. We work at their level. Once they're sleeping well, we can also talk about school. A lot of kids at this age are still at home with mom or dad, whoever the primary caregiver is, and that's fine. Children at this age do not need to attend school, but we do know that high-quality preschool education can help with socialization and then later performance in school. It does need to be high quality for it to make any difference, though, which can be more challenging to find. There's also the federal Head Start program, This was designed to give low-income, high-risk children a head start into the school system. It provides nutrition, health screenings, and then a preschool education for these children. So for these first few years of life, it is really beneficial, especially for those kids who would not get enough to eat at home. But the actual difference in school performance seems to level out around second grade for most of these kids. So not that there's anything wrong with it, just that the benefits seem to be short-term rather than long-term. Next, how about chores? Our preschoolers are old enough to be starting some simple chores around the house, cleaning up their toys, helping with dishes after dinner, even simple tasks in the kitchen can be very helpful to engage the child and help give some structure in their life, which leads us right to discipline. All children do need those rules, those boundaries, but remember that there's a difference between discipline and punishment. We do know that every child, yes, needs discipline, but maybe not so much punishment. We have a lot of good research to show that discipline, structure, guidelines in a child's life increases their school performance, decreases their risk of anxiety and depression, increases their social relationships. Depending on what form of punishment the caregivers choose, then we can actually run into more problems. We're going to talk more about punishment in class, so put a little place marker in there and bring your questions to class. Finally, the last piece of anticipatory guidance to address here is sex education, believe it or not. These are preschoolers. I hear you saying, aren't they too young? Well, actually, we need to just start with some really basic education. Make sure they know proper hygiene for themselves, and make sure they know appropriate rules of who gets to see and touch what parts of their body at different times. So, for example, teaching the children that only the doctor or parents get to remove their underwear and then only with their consent. Making sure they know that it is not okay for a babysitter or a grandparent or any other family member to ask for that. Teaching them to keep their clothes on in public. Believe it or not, that can be a challenge for some preschoolers. Just those safety rules, those normal guidelines that the child needs to know about what is safe touch and what is inappropriate touch. Now, before we finish health promotion, we just need to also touch on nutrition. Just like with the toddlers, the preschool does not necessarily need to eat much during the day to meet their nutritional needs. We do need to start helping them learn to choose healthy foods, and they can also enjoy being engaged in the food preparation. So going to the grocery store with the parents and helping choose foods for the week, helping with simple food preparation for meal times. This is also the age group where a lot of parents start to turn the food into fun little faces or teddy bear pancakes, that kind of thing. And we just need to be careful with that, because remember, animism, children can think that those inanimate objects are actually alive. So if you turn their pancakes into a teddy bear shape, they suddenly might refuse to eat the teddy bear. Or even Teddy Grahams, other animal-shaped foods available from the grocery store, might not be the best idea for this age group. After health promotion, let's talk about injury prevention. Just like with all our other age groups, we're going to mention car seats. Again, we want to keep that child rear-facing until their weight exceeds the limit on the car seat, or some car seats will have hit their expiration by that point. So keep them rear-facing as long as possible. Then with gross motor, we had also talked about a lot of kids learning to ride bikes and trikes and things. So bike safety becomes important, making sure they know where to ride their bike, safe spaces, making sure they're wearing their helmets. And of course, helmets would go for things like skiing, skateboarding, rollerblading, any outdoor activity where there's any chance of them hitting their head. Make sure they have that helmet on. Again, with drowning prevention, We want to, of course, make sure they're supervised around water, but swimming lessons becomes a great activity for this age group, making sure that they know basic water safety, making sure they know to always swim in a supervised area, make sure there's an adult around, all those important water safety rules. Speaking of other safety rules, we start to teach kids about strangers. Who do they talk to? When are they allowed to talk to them? What are they allowed to talk about? So some parents go a little too far to one extreme and tell their children to never talk to anybody they don't know. But then what if the child gets lost? They have to learn which adults to trust. So for example, teaching a child that it's okay to talk to police officers, or that it's okay to talk to other teachers at the school, or simple rules like that. This is also when we should be teaching children their address and their phone number so they know how to get a hold of parents if they do get separated. We did mention safe touch when we were talking about sex ed for these kids. So again, just reinforcing those rules of what's appropriate and what's not. Next, talking about firearms. Again, these kids are too young to be learning gun safety. So just keeping the guns out of sight, locked up where the child is not able to reach them. We can also start teaching kids about violence prevention, ways of conflict resolution that don't involve hitting anyone, teaching the children that it's not okay for anyone to hit them either, and what to do if they are a victim of violence, how to tell a trusted adult about that. And finally, believe it or not, that imaginary play we were talking about. If kids get too carried away in the story they're telling, they can end up injuring one another. Maybe they are pretending that they created a robot and they need to plug it in and they end up playing with an electric socket. Or they read a book about how they tied a horse up by a halter and they end up with a rope around another child's neck. So just supervising them and giving them some basic guidelines for how to stay safe while they're playing is also really important.